Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about different sleep cycles. So if you've ever read Joel Salatin's book, Folks, This Ain't Normal, or anything like that, you'll have realized that there's a lot of stuff in our society today that just simply isn't normal. It's not the way people have adapted to doing things a long time ago. Now I'm not saying get rid of all technology and be Amish and all that stuff. What I'm saying is that our lifestyles are completely different than they had been for thousands of years up until very recently. And one aspect of this is the way that we sleep. So while I was in the Army, occasionally when we'd go out to the field and we weren't doing anything really tactical, there would be a time when we'd have to have somebody up at all times to monitor a radio or something trivial like that. And so every time we'd have to do something like that, there would always be the conversation about who gets what shift. Well, I always like to get the shift directly in the middle of the whole cycle, which was strange to a lot of people. A lot of people wanted the first shift or the last shift. So that way they just stay awake a little bit longer and then they get that whole block of sleep. Or they get that whole block of sleep and they just wake up an hour before everybody else. So that way their sleep is completely uninterrupted. Well, I enjoyed being woke up halfway through and doing something and then going back to sleep for another few more hours. I enjoyed that. And in fact, I got a lot of the best sleep of my life doing that. And I thought I was just weird, which that does sound weird, doesn't it? Right? But about a year ago, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he did the same thing when he was in. So we did some research and found out that people used to sleep in this polyphasic or segmented manner. Now, what does that mean? That means simply that there's more than one segment to your sleep cycle. So all the experts tell us that you should have 1 8-hour block of sleep every night. But apparently that's not the way our ancestors slept. So your great-great-great-grandfather and everybody that he knew slept in a completely different way. And that way of sleeping is what I'm slowly getting back towards. And that is a segmented sleep cycle where you have 2 different blocks of sleep every night. And so how does that work? Well, before the Industrial Revolution, people used to go to sleep shortly after dusk for about 3 or 4 hours. And then they would wake up. They'd wake up for a couple hours, and then they'd go back to sleep for about 3 or 4 hours until dawn. And I found out about a study that was done in 1992 where 8 men were put into a room for 14 hours a day that was completely dark. And what this did was, initially when they got in there, they would sleep about 11 hours a day, make up for that sleep debt that all of us have in this crazy modern world. But then after that, they would adapt just naturally to a polyphasic cycle. They would adapt to sleeping for a few hours, then being awake for a couple hours, and then sleeping a few hours more. And they just naturally adapted to that in a very short period of time too, like a week or two. And that just gave me more evidence that this is the way human beings were designed to sleep. Now, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with sleeping an 8-hour block, but it's not the most efficient. And in fact, when you do so, 65% of that 8-hour block is in a light sleep mode. So there's far more efficient ways to sleep. Now, the way I sleep is the way our ancestors did. So I go to sleep around 9:30 at night, and then I wake up at about midnight 30 to 1:30, somewhere in there. And I stay awake for about 2 hours, and then I go back to sleep until 6:30 when I wake up to take the kids to school. So that's 7 hours of sleep that I get in a 9-hour block. So I have those 2 hours in the middle of the night to do whatever. And I found that I'm getting a lot more out of my sleep. I don't really have much of a desire to sleep in. And those 2 hours that I'm awake, I can think very clearly through whatever it is that I'm doing. Now, there are also a lot of other different sleep patterns that people have come up with. And some of them are specifically designed to maximize your usage of REM sleep and heavy sleep so that way you can get by with less. So typically a human being does need 8 hours of sleep during a 24-hour period, whether that's all at once or segmented. But some of these cycles, notably the Everyman, Uberman, and Dymaxion cycles, which I'll get into in a little bit, they enable you to use less time sleeping so that way you can have a maximum amount of time awake and productive during the day. Now, the Uberman cycle is 20-minute naps spaced throughout the day, 6 of them. So every 4 hours, you would lay down for 20 minutes, and that's it. Now, nobody has ever managed to adapt to that without help from somebody else, like a human alarm clock. So I wouldn't suggest just diving straight into that. And if you do the math, you're only asleep for 2 hours throughout the day. The other one, the Dymaxion, also gives you only 2 hours of sleep a night, but that one's in 30-minute blocks. So that's 4 30-minute blocks spaced out every 6 hours. So that one would be the equivalent of taking a 30-minute nap at midnight, another one at 6 in the morning, one at noon, and one at 6 o'clock p.m. And then the Everyman schedule gives you about 4 hours. And there's a few other ones that give you about 4 hours of sleep, which seems to be one of the more effective ways to do this if you're trying to maximize your awake time. But it's not really necessary to do any of those. Myself, I'm going to stick to the natural cycle that our ancestors had, and I'm going to keep doing that for a while until I decide I'd like to do something else. So let me know if you've had any success with this, or if you've ever done this before, or if you give it a try and find that it helps out, let us know. I hope that you found this informative, and I'd encourage you to do additional research as well. There's a really good website called Polyphasic Society, which I'll put in a link below, so that way you can look at it. And there's a lot of different sleep schedules that they put on there, and they break it down and help you visualize it with the clock a lot better. So I hope you got a lot out of this, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you.